See, you know what? Because I heard the click stop and I thought you stopped.
Hey, what's up guys? It's Lucas and you're watching Fine Tuning. Today we're going to do a deep dive on my pedal board and talk about what makes it so cool. In fact, it might be more accurate to say that this is my entire guitar rig condensed into a pedal board form because I don't actually need a separate amp. The amp is built into the pedal board. I've been working on some version of this rig since I got the AMP1, and that was kind of in the later part of 2021. But then sometime about halfway through 2023, I got the ToneX and kind of rebuilt it, and I really stuck it then. And I think this is the kind of like best version of the board. This is the Mark IV or Mark V iteration of the board or whatever, but I think this is the best version, so I want to show it to you now. So the first thing in the signal chain is this True Tone Pure Tone buffer. Then this serves a dual purpose. So one, when I'm plugged in with a cable instead of a wireless like this helps kind of help with the signal degradation that happens with a longer cable. So this helps kind of retain the top end of the sound of the guitar. But the other reason that I use it is basically just as a glorified input. This is a very kind of inexpensive piece of gear, and this takes the punishment of having the cable plugged in and out of it over and over again. Speaking of, the next thing we hit from the Pure Tone buffer is this Digitech drop pedal. This is just a polyphonic pitch shifter, and it just drops you the entire pitch of your guitar by half-step increments. I have it basically always set to 2 half steps or 1 whole step down. The next thing in the signal chain is this Dunlop 500K mini volume pedal. Basically, I use this to, while I'm singing, be able to turn the volume down and kind of decrease the gain. From the volume pedal, we go to this Dunlop Mini 535Q, and this is the spring-loaded version, which is really important to me as a singer. From the wah, then we hit the MS3. So the MS3, as I said before, is the brains of the entire operation. It's the switcher, it's the multi-effects. So like the majority of the stuff is happening inside of here. The MS3 has 3 switchable loops that you can put pedals in, or in this case, preamps for me. The first loop I have nothing in. I originally left that open because I thought I might add like an EP booster or a compressor or something. But I just found that I didn't need it, so I just left it open. So if I ever wanted to go back and add something, I could. I don't know where I'd put it exactly, but I could. In the second loop, I have the ToneX. So the signal comes from the MS3, goes to the ToneX input, from the ToneX output, back to the return of this effects loop. That allows it to exist and be switched in and out on its own. In this third loop, the last loop, is just the preamp of the AMP1 Iridium edition. So I'm putting this basically in 4-cable method. And that allows me to use either the ToneX sounds or the AMP1's preamps into the AMP1 power amp. Then we have our stereo left and right outputs. The left mono output goes to the power amp of the AMP1, and then I would send that to a speaker cabinet. And the right output goes to this junction box here, and that again is just serves as a box to plug in and out of. And this goes, I'll run a cable to this to a separate power amp, and I'll run a second cab if I want to run in stereo like I would do in a 3-piece band. The Sonic Cake IR, that is comes off of the recording out on the AMP1, and so the direct out with no filter, no speaker model goes to this, goes through impulse responses that I have made and preloaded in here, and then there's an XLR out of this box, and that goes to the front of house. So now that I've kind of shown you the signal path of the board, let's talk about the applications in which I use it, because there's basically 2 bands that I play in, and I use this board for everything. So application 1 would be the cover band, and that covers a lot of territory, and so I need to cover a lot of sounds with that rig. And that rig is also usually stereo because it's 1 guitar player, me, and then bass and drums. So I like to play in stereo and have a cab on either side of the stage, and that way I can have kind of a big full sound, the bass player can hear me and whatever, and it kind of makes us sound a little thicker than we are with just having 1 guitar player. Now for that rig, what I would use is my 2 BluGuitar Nano cabs. They're small 112 cabs, and I have put Eminence EM12N 200-watt neodymium speakers in them. So they're extremely high headroom, they're kind of dark and punchy, and they're just a big sounding speaker, so it makes the guitar sound a lot more full range and thick just to be 1 guitar and exist by itself. Then the other application would be InterTwyneD, which is my kind of original sort of harder rock band. So that's an entirely different setup because there's 3 guitar players, myself included, in that band. So there's no reason for me to play stereo, the effect would be lost. So I have a more kind of narrow, focused, and aggressive sound in that band. I also tend to dial up things like delays more prominently so you can really hear it stick out in the mix when I take a lead. I use a different cabinet with that band, so rather than use a stereo setup with the 1x12s, I use a mono setup just from this rig, and I run that into my BluGuitar twin cab, which is a 2x12, a real tight 2x12, and it has Celestion Vintage 30s in it. I'll take a picture and throw it up on the screen. So this twin cab for InterTwyneD and the nano cabs for the Carolina Shreds, the cover band. And that alone, just the cabinet change, makes a big difference in the sound and like the way that the guitar sits in the mix. So if we look down at the MS3 here, you can see that I have 4 buttons, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a tuner button for me. That's what I use it for, just to step and turn it on the tuner. It mutes the sound. But what these do is they operate as individual kind of patches, right? So each one of these could be an entirely different sound with an entirely different set of effects coming from the AMP1 or the ToneX, and whatever effect set that I want. And what that allows me to do is program banks of 4 for each song. So I have like a 30 song set in the shreds usually. And so each one of those 30 songs will have 4 patches available to me. Now, to make those sounds for individual songs, what I have are kind of master patches, right? So I have like a master clean patch for InterTwyne and a master clean patch for the shreds. And then I will kind of make songs with whatever sounds I need from those master patches. I'll just use those as my starting template. So what I'm going to show you today is just my master patches for both of those bands, using both the AMP1's preamp and the ToneX's preamp. Okay, so let's start with some of those cover band sounds. We're going to use the shreds guitar, and I am using the AMP1 kind of side of things. So a good example would be the clean sound. So I have the clean sound from the AMP1 dialed in, kind of the way that I like it, sort of nice, pretty, and sparkly. I have a compressor from the MS3 as well as a reverb built in the MS3. It's kind of a spring reverb sound. And that sounds like this. So I use that sound, not as much maybe as some of the other sounds, but I do definitely use a clean sound in that band. Some good examples would be songs that tend to be more acoustic based. I probably would use just a regular clean sound there instead. So examples would be like, we play Night Moves by Bob Seger. We play that in a different key, but basically I would use a clean sound instead of the acoustic for that. If we move to the next sound, that would be changing to the vintage channel. So I can control the gain inside of the AMP1 with my MIDI control. So even though my gain knob is set at 10, I have the gain on this preset set very low. I think at like maybe 10% or something. And that I use for kind of like, it's a little more than edge of breakup, but just kind of breaking up a little bit, kind of a lighter breakup sound, not quite even AC/DC. So I would probably use that for something like the Seeker, like the Who type sounds. Like. Again, you can hear there's that big spring reverb sound. It sounds really, especially when you're hearing it direct like this, it sounds like a big wash of reverb, but in the live context, it's really not. It's just kind of a subtle thing. And I just don't want to mess with my presets. I could make it sound a little nicer here, but I'd rather leave it alone for the live sake. I might also use that for Lights by Journey. So the next thing we would move to would be the classic channel. This is kind of the mid-gain, kind of Marshall-y, like 800 type sound. Might use this for Working Man. You'll notice this one has less reverb on it. That's by design because I kind of want those big Marshall stack sounds. They wouldn't have reverb. That would be a less reverby sound, so this has less reverb on it. There's just a little bit of a room reverb. The last kind of AMP1 thing here would be the classic mode again, but I've turned up the gain a little bit and I've added some delay. And this is a parallel delay where there's a 500 millisecond delay on one side and a 375 millisecond delay on the other side. Live, I would have this stereo and they would be ping-ponging back and forth, but you're just gonna hear it in mono. But that sounds like this. So that's the kind of AMP1 centric version of the shreds rig. But if I want to use the ToneX instead, I would just bump up to the ToneX. And this is kind of the same philosophy as what I just showed you, but using ToneX sounds rather than AMP1 sounds. So now you're going to hear the ToneX into the power amp of the AMP1. So my clean sound, same reverb, same compression, but instead of using the AMP1's clean preamp, now what I'm using is the ToneX with a capture of my early kind of 90s Fender Blues Deluxe that I got from Jose. Same thing if we go to the kind of lower gain sound, rather than the vintage channel, this is the A60, the Legend A60's clean channel with kind of a low gain clip sound. If we go over to channel 3, again, this is that mid-gain kind of Marshall-esque sound, but here, instead of that classic mode, I'm using the tone capture on the ToneX of my Legend Super Lead 50, which is probably my favorite amp of all time. And then if we go to this last one, again, this would be like the Super Lead 50, but like a higher gain setting, and I've added some of that delay. Again, if that seems really dark, it's because it's dialed in to play with the band. Okay, so now we've hopped over to the Custom 24, which is my kind of like InterTwyneD original guitar. So now that we've switched guitars, we also need to switch cabinets, right? So live, I would be playing through the different cabinet I've used in the twin cab instead of the nano cabs. So I'm just gonna do that virtually on the IR pedal. So I'll reach down and we'll put it over on number 3. And number 3 is an IR that I made of my twin cab with the Vintage 30s. So this is the clean sound. It's that same clean sound from the shreds, but there's more reverb, and there's kind of a bigger, it's not spring reverb, it's more like a big washy plate reverb, because the clean parts that I play in InterTwyneD tend to be more dramatic and ambient. So a good example would be like the Citadel intro. So you can hear that's a big, longer, more dramatic reverb. And that's going to be kind of like a motif with the InterTwyneD stuff. The effects are going to be more dramatic because I'm playing in a thicker mix. If we go to the kind of vintage mode here, this is what I use for like mid-gain verse sounds. Like if I want, this is usually like what I call the second verse sound. You know, it's a similar type thing, but with a little bit more gain on it. So I use that sound a lot, that kind of mid-gain verse thing. That's also the sound I use for, there's a couple of our songs where we do little twangy parts. If we go to 3, this is the modern channel on the AMP1, and this amp feels like an entirely different amp in the modern mode. You're in somewhere between rectifier and 5150 kind of sound. It's very aggressive and it's got its real like pokey top end. So that would be like this kind of thing. So no reverb, just completely dry, and it's got that big, you know, crystal clear kind of 6-note attack thing. When I hit all the strings, you can hear all the notes in the chord. Really important to me. And then finally, of course, we've got just a lead sound. So I go back to the classic channel for this with a higher gain and kind of give it like a focused lead type sound. And I use this for all the lead sounds, a lot of times with wah pedal, especially for kind of quick bits. So as you can see, it's a high gain sound, a very high gain. That's just all the gain from the channel. There's no overdrive or anything. And then there's a big kind of cascading long delay sound. Again, just to jump out. It's a mono delay sound, but it's a big, like long, full delay sound, so you can hear it in the mix of the band. It's subtle in the mix of the band, it just seems like a lot here. So if we go over to the ToneX version of the InterTwyneD rig, this, I kind of tend to lean more towards this with InterTwyneD, in particular because of the MT15 rhythm sound, which I'll get to in a second. This is the clean sound. Again, now we're using that Blues Deluxe sound, but with more reverb, and it's kind of a bigger washy sound. So I would use that for something like the clean part in Seasons right before the last chorus. So it's a real big ambient sound, and it kind of fits the dramatic nature of that band. Again, here's that kind of lower gain verse sound. In this case, I'm using Legend again, the super lead, kind of that lower gain sound. I also use that for kind of more lower riff parts, like in Mask, there's a little soft part before the breakdown. I'll probably have to roll the volume back with the volume pedal a little bit. So I would probably use that for that thing. You could do the clean part too, but and then 3, this is the MT15. So The MT15 is like part of the sound of InterTwyneD now. We've all fallen in love with it, so we really use it for tracking and stuff a lot. It has like a really thick, deep bass sound that really glues the bass guitar and the electric guitar together. And it's just thick and guttural, and Mark's tone is whew. So that sounds like this. Which is just, I mean. It's just a really guttural, nasty, aggressive sound. This is the high gain lead sound for the ToneX side of the rig. So this is a profile of my 2-channel custom 50 back here, which is just an amazing sounding amp, and I love. And as always with my lead sounds, you can probably hear there's a kind of like warm, dark philosophy that I have, that approach to leads. It's kind of like, I like Eric Johnson's lead sound, and I kind of try to get a little bit of that feeling in there. All right, so I know this is a really long one. I appreciate whoever stuck around this long to watch my nerdy musings about this pedal board, but I'm really happy with this setup. And I'm so happy with it that I have kind of built a similar version of this rig for multiple guys now. Multiple friends of mine would like see this and be like, hey, I want to do that. And so like they've come and I've kind of helped build the same thing in one version or another for them. And everybody that has this rig, like Brad and Jeff, I know both have the same rig, more or less, and I know they both really like it. And it's just been super cool for me to be able to cover all that ground and have all that versatility in terms of switching and tones and effects and everything. So I appreciate you sticking around this long if you have. Leave a comment, let me know what you think of the different sounds, which amp version you like better, the AMP1 or the ToneX, or for which thing. I'm curious, because I have thoughts and I'm constantly tweaking with things. I'm sure it drives my bandmates crazy. But be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment and all that good stuff. And until next time, I will catch you later.